love you, wife, for having me with you guys today.
Thanks.
Darryl, first question. First thing that comes to mind. Early in your career, you were compared to a number of immortal players, among them the great Ted Williams. How much pressure did that put on you, and how did you handle the pressure early on when you were first coming up with the Mets?
Well, truly, I never thought about it. I just thought about being who Darryl Strawberry is supposed to be. I think we always compare players to other players, and I think it's unfair to compare players to great players that have already established themselves and done some great things in the game of baseball. And I would always say, let young players develop and let them figure out who they are, because the pressures are high enough when you play in New York City. I mean, if I was playing somewhere else, maybe in Seattle or Cincinnati, somewhere where it was quiet and you didn't have to deal with so much media, who knows what type of player I would have turned out to be. But the expectations were so high in New York City. And I'm glad the expectations were so high in New York City, because it really did actually make me play at the highest level and become the player that I have become.
Darryl, why is it so important to treat our bodies with respect?
Well, I think you only get one shot at life. You know, as we see, life it doesn't last forever. You know, you only have a window of opportunity, and we get one body, and you know, we need to treat it as best as we can. And I could say, did I always treat mine as best as it could? No, not really. Not when I was living a life and living a fast life and playing baseball, and the lifestyle of baseball was so demanding, and the travel and so many other things that come along with it. But I realized the importance of watching two players on my team who were really solid in their lifestyle, and that was Gary Carter and Mookie Wilson. And it just means so much to me today that I had an opportunity to see how well they lived their life and the principles they had, and also taking care of themselves. And Gary went home to be with the Lord at a very young, early age, at the age of 57. But what an incredible legacy he left behind for somebody like me and other players to be able to see that you can live a different way. And I'm really thankful for that, for those two guys.
Yeah, two all-time greats and beloved players. Along those same lines, we lost a number of Hall of Famers and great players over the past year and a half or so. If you could share some thoughts and memories with regards to the great Tom Seaver.
Well, you know, just like you said, we have lost a lot of people, a lot of great players, and you know, time is not waiting on anybody. It's moving, and it's moving fast, and we need to make the best out of who we are as people while we have that opportunity. And I think that's the most important thing. And you know, baseball is just a game, and you know, leaving a legacy for what we did in the game is great, but leaving a legacy as a great person, and I think that's what Seaver was, you know, and what he was for the game, and all that he accomplished, you know, was just more than you can ever imagine, but just the kind of person that you evolved to be, you know. And I think that's the most important thing in anyone's life, you know, not just because we're athletes, but at the same time, you have a platform that people are watching you. So try to leave a great legacy about life and how did you overcome and deal with the things that you had to deal with in life, because we're all going to have to deal with something. It's just a matter of how do we overcome them.
Absolutely. You talked about wealth and fame being intoxicants for you. What other factors get between us and God?
Well, I think it is. I think it's celebrity status, high profile, and you live a certain way, and everybody, you know, dangle everything at you and let you do whatever you want to do, and say you're the greatest, and that's not really true. You know, I think that lifestyle really cripples a lot of people, especially young people like myself coming into the league and getting fame so quick and getting wealth so quick. I think it has a tendency of making you think that nothing's ever going to happen. You know, you're never going to run into any kind of trouble. You're never going to run into any kind of situations that's going to cripple you. You think this is just the way it's going to be. And unfortunately, it just doesn't work like that. You know, I took a different road. I'm glad, you know, for, you know, the wealth and fame and the struggle that I had and where it took me to, and where it allowed me to bring my life to after, you know, I got out of baseball and I took the uniform off and I became a man. See, a baseball uniform didn't make me a man. It just made me a baseball player. I became a man when I started living a life and living in principles and walking in faith and living a different way. That's what made me a man.
Great. In the new book, you use many examples from your own life to talk about God's saving grace. Is it still painful to talk about the struggles you had? And do you find meaning and fresh revelations when you reflect on the past?
I don't have any trouble talking about it because I have victory over it. You know, if I was still sitting in the same place and I was stuck and I didn't have the victory that I have and the freedom that I have on the inside and the life that, like I said, I watched Gary Carter live a life and it was just remarkable because he was so happy, he was so joyful, and everybody thought, well, he was not real. He was real, but he was just free on the inside. And I think that's what we all really want to be, liberated on the inside more than what we look like on the outside. And I had the frustration of looking good from a standpoint of a physical standpoint on the outside and playing Major League Baseball, but on the inside, I was broken on the inside. I had a lot of issues. You know, my father rejected me and told me I would never amount to anything, and came home for the last time when I was young, around 14 years old, and pulled out a shotgun and said he was going to kill the whole family. And me and my brothers went into action. Had it not been for my mother, Greg, getting me out of the house, I mean, I think we would have killed him that night. It could have been a tragedy in my life before I ever put the uniform on. And I always say my pain led me to my greatness, but my greatness would eventually lead me to my destructive behavior.
What was your favorite moment? Well, we have from the audience. I'm going to ask this question. Well, two-part. What was your favorite moment as a Met, and what was your favorite moment as a Yankee? I think there's a pretty obvious both of those.
Well, I think the favorite moment as a Met was when we really clinched the division that year in 1986. I mean, that was just the beginning of who we were to come and everything. And I just remember that night Doc Gooden was pitching at home and we clinched that ball game against the Cubs. And I just remember all the fans pouring on the field. And see, as a kid, when you grow up and you watch baseball, that's what you used to see back in the days. You know, when a team clinched the division or team clinched a playoff game series, you know, the fans would get the opportunity to run on the field and pour on the field and celebrate with you. And that memory stuck with me for forever, you know, seeing that night at Shea Stadium and seeing the way they took over the field. And it was just part of what the history for the Mets were, you know, for a very long time of struggling. And here it is, we get into the playoffs and we go on our way into the playoffs and get to the World Series that year. And we get on to be victorious. You know, that memory was great. And, you know, when, like you say about the Yankees, it was just about the same thing, going over there, playing, having an opportunity to put on the pinstripes and playing for the boss, George. What a wonderful person who cared about people more than just the baseball uniform. And that's what I have so much respect about him as a man, because he cared about people and he loved people right where they were at, and he didn't judge people and he wanted to help people. So and playing over there with all those guys over there was just a phenomenal time too.
Yeah, that was the other. That segues into my next question. If you could share a little bit about George and Ray Negron and the time with the Yankees and how they supported your struggles a bit. Mike Dempsey had asked that question. Mike's on, and wanted to hear a little bit more with regards to that, because I know Ray's a good guy and he's very supportive. So if you could share a little bit of insights from that perspective, that would be great.
Oh, no question. Ray Negron is a great friend, and he's always have been and always will be. And he's done a lot of things for players, the Yankee organization, and family. He's got the history behind him of who he is because of the boss, and how George opened up the doors for him and gave him great opportunities. And like I said, I wasn't the only one. Ray wasn't the only one. He did it for so many people. Excuse me. And you would hope that you would see most owners like that, you know, in sports, that will love and care about the person, not just the ability to play. You know, sometimes in sports, it's always tied up, you know, about, you know, can you play? Can you help me win? I get that. That's part of it, yes. But if you can't help the team win, you have to be removed and go somewhere else. But when you look back over those years playing with the Yankees, it was George caring about players, you know, that could help him win, but also caring about the personal life of people.
Why is a set-apart heart crucial to finding God's purpose for us?
Well, I think because we're set apart in such a society that tells us that we should be a certain way. And I think that's the problem as we look at the society that we're living in today. You know, the brokenness of it, of young generation, lawlessness brings about brokenness. It just keeps being bringing broken generation, and we keep being separated from the real principles of the foundation that's been here forever. And we've turned away from that, and we've turned into a society that say, well, you can do whatever you want. You know, celebrities can do whatever they want. They can say whatever they want. And at the end of the day, we're going to have to answer to that. You know, and I think a lot of people don't take that seriously. You know, there's going to come a time in your life that you're going to have to answer to that, and you're going to have to meet God face to face after death. And as we can see, so many people are entering into this place of their new life of death, because it's real and it's waiting on all of us. I'm just a second away from it, just like you or anybody else. And we just have to know that while we're here, be the best that we can, treat people the best way, and be kind to people, no matter what, you know, no matter what they've been through, what color they are. You know, God created all of us as human beings to love. And I think we've gotten away from that.
Which of the 9 blessed characteristics in Matthew 5 hit home for you personally, Darryl?
Well, I probably have to go down to the one of being, you know, persecution, you know, because I say that, the reason why I say that is because I remember Gary Carter when he was playing, and he was a Christian and he lived a different way, and he got persecuted so much because of his lifestyle, because he didn't drink alcohol, he didn't chase women, you know, he drank milk, and he went home to be with his family. And I think people persecuted him over that. And I think you're going to be persecuted because of who you stand for in your faith. And my faith is my greatest gift now, you know, for me, you know, to stand on the principles and live a different way. I mean, my mother raised me white. Don't get me wrong. I chose to live the heathen lifestyle, the womanizer, the alcoholic, the drug addict, the sinner. I made a choice to live that life, and my mother raised me with great principles, and I just didn't follow her principles. And she prayed for me, and she passed away, and she went home early to be with the Lord at the age of 55 from terminal breast cancer. And I found the journal under her bed. My sister did and gave it to me, and she was praying that God would knock me off my throne and my fame, and he would bring salvation to my life and save me. So I'm forever grateful for my mother praying for me. What a wonderful woman to raise 5 kids by herself.
Great. So we'll take some questions. So folks, we've got a lot of people participating. So if you'd like to ask a question, just shoot it over and I'll be happy to ask it. Don't want to put Darryl on the spot too much here, but someone wanted to know who was your favorite Yankee teammate?
Well, Derek Jeter, of course. You know, I mean, how can you not like a guy and love a guy that never said a bad thing about anybody? You know, it's just a wonderful person. I speak highly of him all the time because I remember when he was a young kid in '95, and I just saw the potential. And I just remember sitting on the bench and told him, "Don't worry, you're going to play here in New York, and you're going to be a star." I said, "They're going to love you, and they're going to love you because of the way you play, and plus you look good, you know. So you're a good-looking guy. So you kind of had a little bit of everything going for him, but inside the person he was just far incredible than you can ever imagine."
Another question from the audience. What would you consider the best moment of your career, your highlight of your career?
The 1986 Met team. That was the highlight of my career. Who we were. I remember day one in spring training, our first team meeting, because we had lost 84 to the Cubs. We lost 85 to the Cardinals. We went to spring training in '86. And our first meeting, David didn't say much. David just said, "Guys, we're going to win it all." And we just kind of looked around and we thought to ourselves, we're going to win it all. And we went out there and we dominated the National League East. And when you think about teams today in baseball today and the way they play today, they have an opportunity to get in the wild card, but we didn't have an opportunity to get in the wild card when we played. So I think it was just awesome that we knew 1986 that we were going to have a great year, and we ran away with the East, and we had to go into the playoffs with the Astros and World Series with the Red Sox, and we come back. You know, it was just a team of destiny that year. I had a lot of great guys, a lot of fun, and I'm so thankful for that.
I'm going to let my son, a junior journalist, ask the next question here.
All right.
Hi.
How you doing, young man?
I'm doing well. I'm a big fan.
Thank you.
I was just going to ask, God rest his soul, fantastic manager, what was it like playing for Tommy Lasorda?
Yeah, bless his heart. You know, I mean, Tommy was more of a Hollywood star, you know, type of manager out in California, kind of laid back, you know, and him and the pasta and the rah-rah, but he was fun to play for. I just think, when you see him and what people saw from him, that's the kind of person he was. He was a really outgoing person, and he really loved and cared for people. I appreciate his life, and what he stood for, and what he accomplished, in his baseball career as a manager, and all he did for the game of baseball.
Darryl, why is it important to accept Jesus' free gifts of salvation on his terms, not on ours?
Because it's free, it's freely given. I mean, I think when you understand grace, I'm sitting here because of grace, something I didn't deserve, and he gave it to me even with my shortcomings. And that's why I think it's important for us to be able to accept that freely and understand that it comes to us freely. It's up to us. It's not up to him. People always ask me about Christ, Jesus Christ. They always ask me, how did you find him? He's never been lost. I was the one lost. He's still the same, today, yesterday, and forevermore. And he's going to always still be the same forever. It's just about us coming to that place of finding him and accepting that relationship to be able to walk with him.
So obviously, as we talked about in the beginning of the call, today's the start of spring training. One of the questions that we had from the audience was, would you ever consider or have a desire to get back into baseball in any capacity?
No, not far as being on the field or around baseball. I think that time has passed. I think a lot of other guys enjoy being around that. But being around the organization or something like that, there's a great possibility. Now that the Mets have new ownership, I might like to return back to Citi Field and represent, the team that I grew up under. With the old ownership, I just didn't want to have anything to do with it. I just stayed away and went on about life. And I'm going to continue to go on about life because my life is very busy. But, I do have great memories from the Met fans. If anything I ever take away from New York, it's the Met fans and Yankee fans. It's the fans more than anything. It has nothing to do with anybody else. When a player stays away, like we did, so many of the 86 Mets stayed away from the organization because they really didn't treat us well. So we just felt like, it was better for us to stay away.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, to that point, even just today, the new Mets ownership announced that they want to reinstitute Old Timers Day, and your name was one of the first that came up.
Why my name is the first one?
Well, why not? You're a legend in Mets lore, so why not? I mean.
Well, I tell you this, guys. I really like the new ownership. I like the fact that he's a true Met fan and that he cares about the history of the Mets organization. And when you look back and you look at over the years, the history of the Mets organization, there's some pretty phenomenal players that have come through that organization. And now that has removed themselves from it for a very long time. And it's really sad that, that has happened. Tom Seaver, his statue should have been up a long time ago. I mean, that's a no-brainer right there. He was the franchise player, the history of what the Mets were. And you don't see anything of him around the stadium anywhere. You see pictures of people and stuff like that. But, when you talk about history and you go over to Yankee Stadium, they got their history of their core people, who wore the pinstripes for a long time and did great things. And you go to the Mets history, it just doesn't have that. Hopefully one day they will get that in Citi Field.
Yeah, I mean, they really need to embrace the history of the team and from the glory years and how many great players have come through there. And I think that with the new ownership, that'll happen. And that'll be great to see you back in a Mets uniform on Old Timers Day, and hopefully getting those long arcing home runs out of Citi Field during.
Well, I don't know if all that's going to happen, as far as home runs, but if they reach out and invite me, of course I would come back because it's definitely a new ownership, and I have, like I said, I have a lot of respect for the new ownership, Steve, and what he's been doing and the way he's been bringing excitement about the Mets organization.
So another question from the audience: toughest pitcher you ever faced and why?
Well, the toughest pitcher I ever had to face was Nolan Ryan. Nolan Ryan was old school. He was like a Tom Seaver guy, and they didn't play around. If you didn't get in the box, hey, they're going to throw one under your chin. They were just different, and Nolan Ryan had a different demeanor about himself when he stood on the mound. He was totally different than most pitchers I ever faced, because his face was like, get in the box. He didn't play. You know, you could tell he's not playing, and don't dig in and don't get too comfortable in the box, you know. And so when you saw those kind of things about a guy, you understand that you had to have great respect for him.
So Darryl, was there a specific, you mentioned about your mom and finding her journal. Was there a specific event that turned you to God?
Well, I just think it was a combination of a lot of things, you know, being lost and living a life separated, and, you know, living a sinful life, and just knowing that this is what wasn't the way, this way doesn't work. And just coming back, and I think my wife, Tracy, who's my wife today, she was in my life, and she would been into my life, and she led me back into church, and she led me back to the Lord. And I'm just really grateful for that, you know, that she was there, you know, through some really hard times for me when everything was gone and there was nothing there, and it was just the bottom of the pail in the pit. It was her being there, leading me back and bringing me back into, you know, my faith and everything. And then my whole life decided that it would take a different turn and change for the better.
So Darryl, if you could share a little bit about some of the sacrifices that you made while on Celebrity Apprentice, and why is it so important to keep a watch out for temptation?
Well, because temptations is real, and, you know, overcoming temptations is real too, you know, and it's a process that you have to go through. And when I was on the show, it wasn't nothing against anybody else. It had nothing to do with anybody else, but I wasn't drinking anymore behind the scenes, and I wasn't using language anymore. So I realized that if I could wiggle my way out of it, I would do that. And there I was in the midst of it. You know, we lost the task, and Michael Johnson was the project manager, and nobody wanted to get fired. And Trump kept asking, who should I fire? And all the guys were looking around, says, fire me. He goes, why should I fire you? He goes, New York loved you. You're doing great on the show. And he goes to Michael, who should I fire? Michael goes, I don't know. And asked a couple of guys that nobody would answer. So I said, fire me. He says, you want to get fired? I said, yes. He says, you're fired. So there it was. I was on my way out. I was trying to wiggle my way around the situations behind the scene because my life had changed. My wife didn't want me going on the show, but I went on the show because I knew President Trump, and I knew friends of his that worked. They were close friends of mine, you know, and they got me on the show, and my wife didn't want me on the show. She thought it'd be a little bit too much behind the scenes, and she was right about that. And I just had to challenge myself to make the right decision in that time.
All right, so we're going to take a couple more questions and we'll wrap it up shortly. What advice would you give to young aspiring players that want to play in the major leagues?
I would just give the advice that I would give to them is you have to love the game, and you have to understand that you're going to be successful, but also you have to understand you're going to have some failures. And if you can accept your failures as you can accept being successful, then you can be able to withstand, you know, the storms that come, because there are going to be some storms that come, and can you handle that? And can you handle the pressure of that? And I would just encourage young players, man, to walk and get some faith in your life. You know, when I was playing and I saw Gary Carter and Mookie Wilson live a life separate and different, they love playing baseball, but they lived a different life. And I would encourage young players to live a different life. Don't live a fast life. It's trouble out there. It's dangerous. You can get yourself into real bad places, situations like I did. You get caught up into drinking alcohol. You get caught up into drugs. I remember when I was a rookie, first road trip, I remember a veteran player sent me to the back of the plane and introduced me to cocaine. Had I not been broken, and had I had some stability inside of myself and been strong, I probably would have never went back there and done that. And I probably would have never started on that road. But it is what it is. And, you know, and I remember seeing The Last Dance when Michael Jordan walked into that room and he saw everybody was doing something else. And he just realized that he didn't want to do that. He was strong enough to walk out of that room. I wasn't strong enough not to, you know, go to that bathroom and say, well, let me be a part of this, because I was broken on the inside and I needed to be healed. And I would go on a long journey. And I just remember when young players came to the big leagues, I would never introduce them to anything wrong. I would never take them out. I would never tell them to drink. I would take them out and take them shopping, and I would buy them clothes. I say, this is what the big leagues is all about. A veteran player like me, take you out and buy clothes for you. I would never show them the bad habits, because I never wanted them to pick up the bad habits that I had picked up.
Darryl, what are the 2 scripture passages that can get someone started on the path to turning their life around?
Well, I think John 14:6 is one where Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. He is the gateway to everything. He's the gateway to my life. He's the gateway to everything of who I am, why I live the way I live, why I act the way I act. And I'm just grateful for that. And then I think Ephesians 3:20 says, now to him who is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we ask or think according to his power that works in us. It's a great power of Christ that rule and reign that works inside of me, that allows me to be the man I am today, allows me to stand in front of thousands and be able to preach the gospel and never went to school and not qualified because I thought I had to be qualified, but God said no one is qualified. When he called me 13 years ago to preach, he says, I qualify the call. So I just stepped into the call and I believed it and I trusted and I started working in a different direction to love people and help people and encourage people.
Great. So Darryl, I know you don't follow the game as closely as you did in the past, but with the additions that both the Mets and Yankees made this year, any predictions on where they'll end up?
Well, I think the most important thing is knowing who you are. You have to be able to identify yourself in spring training. And I think a lot of times that's what the Mets have missed out of, identifying themselves in spring training of who they are as a team, as a group. I think the Yankees have always been able to identify themselves because they have put their pieces together the right way. And when I say that is they develop the young players in a minor league system and they bring them up together and have them play together. I think the Mets need to get back to that. The reason why we were so good in those 80s is because we developed young players and we had some veteran players like Hernandez, Carter, Ray Knight, Mookie Wilson, guys who had solid foundations that younger players can watch play and become great at what they do.
Great. Well, thank you, Darryl. I mean, this has been a real pleasure. I look forward to doing it again. Just to remind anyone that hasn't already purchased the book, again, the name of the book is Turn Your Season Around, How God Transforms Your Life. It's available through Bookends bookstore. That's bookends.com. Walter is holding the book up right now. He has additional copies available. And again, it's been an absolute pleasure, Darryl. You're one of the really good guys. You give back at every turn. Never turn down anybody for an autograph, giving guidance along the way, and look forward to us having an opportunity to chat again in the near future. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Greg, for having me. Thank you, Walter, and your lovely wife for having my book. I appreciate you guys. I've been at your store before. You guys are wonderful people, and I really appreciate you guys.
Appreciate it. Guys, that was a fantastic interview, and Pat is recording this, so if anybody wants a copy, just give us a call or email us. But we do have additional signed copies that Darryl was kind enough to sign. And Greg, thank you for your help again. I really appreciate you guys making a good team. I think this could be a go-to event for in the future. So one of these days we'll hopefully be back together in person, and hopefully before not too long. So thanks a lot to all the fans out there. Thank you, Darryl and Greg, and look forward to reading the book.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. Also, thanks to all the wonderful fans out there. Appreciate you guys showing up online today.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Good luck.